Well, Elon Musk has torched Trump's big, beautiful bill, saying, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it." And obviously, that would be referring to Donald Trump as well, considering that Elon Musk, Trump, this was Trump's bill, so it wasn't just the members of Congress who voted for it, but it's also Trump who's championing it. So Musk is also talking to Trump on this one. What an end to a bromance, right? I mean, this is just like the end of an era. A very short-lived relationship, which I think is most of Musk's relationships. This is very short-lived. But look, Elon isn't alone. Rand Paul, Thomas Massie, and others have also criticized the bill. So let's break down this big, beautiful bill and find out what's wrong with it. So imagine you have a big piggy bank at home and your parents decide to give you and your friends some extra allowance. But to do that, they decide they got to take money away from your little brother's lunch money and your grandma's medicine fund. They also let you borrow a lot more money from the bank, even though you already owe a lot. That's kind of what Trump's big, beautiful bill is doing. So let's go ahead and break this down very specifically what's in this bill. So the first thing that it does is it makes the 2017 Trump tax cuts permanent for individuals and businesses. So a lot of people are championing this. This is something Rand Paul likes. He says, look, let's do this. Yes, let's make these tax breaks permanent. If you need a reminder of what 2017 tax breaks did, this permanently reduced the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%, reduced most individual income tax rates from the top rate, for example, dropped from 39.6% to 37%, increased the standard deduction, which is the amount you could subtract from your income before paying taxes. That went from $6,500 to $12,000 for individuals and $13,000 to $24,000 for married couples filing jointly. So there were a lot of different tax breaks that were put into that 2017 bill. And this new big, beautiful bill makes those permanent. A lot of those were to sunset right after 2025. So they were coming up to the end. Trump wanted to make them permanent. This bill makes them permanent. That a lot of people are happy about. They like that part of the bill. But some other things that it does is it eliminates federal income tax on tips, overtime pay, and Social Security income for seniors. So that's got a lot of people also excited. You've got a lot of servers excited for that. They're thinking, great, this is what we want. You know, we want to eliminate that federal income tax on tips, on overtime pay, on Social Security. So these are things that are getting people happy, excited. Make the 2017 tax breaks permanent. No tax on tips, awesome, right? This also increases the child tax credit to $2,500 through 2028, then reverts it back to $2,000. It raises the cap on state and local tax, which is the SALT deduction. A lot of people in the high income states, now I know a lot of people are pointing at this saying, well, this is just for rich people in those rich states, but in those, in states like California and in New York, this matters to a lot of what maybe in other states would not seem like middle income, but in those states it is because the cost of living is so high. So the SALT deduction goes from $10,000 to $40,000, which does mainly benefit those high-income earners or people in those very expensive states. It also creates an automatic $1,000 savings account for newborns with investment and family contribution options. So a lot of people are thinking, well, that's a pretty good thing, right? Teaching young people to invest, even though I don't think that's going to teach them anything. But because if you have it and it's always there, what is it actually teaching you? It also expands business tax breaks. It makes small business deduction permanent and expands it. It allows immediate expensing for equipment, R&D, and new factories. It renews and enhances opportunity zone investment. So these are all the good things that we're going over right now, the things that are getting people pretty excited about the bill, things that are getting some Republicans to actually vote for this. It also cuts spending on social safety net programs. Now, a lot of people are for this because they feel like people take advantage of these programs, that, they're just living off of them and they shouldn't be. They're taking advantage of them. They're able-bodied. They should be able to go out and work. So it reduces Medicaid funding by $880 billion. Democrats are saying this is likely to cause millions to lose health coverage. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says that's not true. This is actually just literally cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. People should not have Medicaid in like multiple states, I believe is something he said. There's just like some other things in there that he's saying. This isn't actually going to take Medicaid away from anybody. It just cuts the duplications and the waste, fraud, and abuse. It imposes strict work requirements for Medicaid and SNAP, which is food stamps. including for adults up to age 65 and parents with kids as young as 8. Narrows eligibility for the child tax credit by requiring both parents to have Social Security numbers, excluding nearly 2 million citizen children in immigrant families. So there are going to be a lot of kids who have one parent who is an American citizen and maybe the other is not, and this potentially will impact them. This also ends or reduces federal support for certain programs, like eliminates federal subsidized loans for undergraduates and reduces income-driven repayment options for student loans. That actually might be a good thing. The student loan crisis is one that, but that one is not actually that difficult to solve, in my opinion. It's not just about, let's forgive all the student debt and have at it, because then the banks will just continue loaning out the money and the colleges will just continue increasing tuition. But if you remove the incentive, which is just giving loans to every single student, regardless of what kind of degree they're going to be pursuing, if you just eliminate that, we're just handing out money to everybody, then the banks, and it's guaranteed money by the government. So the banks are like, all right, then just give money to anybody. And then the schools are like, wow, okay, well, you're just giving money to anybody. So we could just raise the tuition, right? Because you're just going to get that money. And it creates that cycle. So perhaps this would work in helping reducing the cost of of schools. Perhaps. So eliminating federal subsidized loans for undergraduates, reducing income-driven repayment options, maybe we'll have a change on that. Also changes Pell Grant rules, requiring more credits for full-time status, but expands eligibility to short-term vocational training, which is good. We need to support vocational training. Cuts or eliminates clean energy and electric vehicle tax credits, repeals Biden's EV mandate. Wonder if that had something to do with Elon Musk exiting out of there, saying, wait a minute, you're not going to allow those clean energy electric vehicle tax credits? I doubt that had it, but nonetheless, it's just saying, okay, you don't have to have an EV in order to get a tax credit. We're just going to eliminate those. Implements new policies on immigration and border security. It funds more border wall construction and increases deportation of undocumented immigrants. Do we need it? Do we need the wall? Did it turn out, did we need the wall at all? Because look at how much immigration has been curbed and we did not build a wall. And yet we pretty much got immigration. We got the border crisis down to pretty much zero without building a wall. So clearly it can be done without spending gobs of money. Removes undocumented immigrants from Medicaid and SNAP eligibility, adds new fees on remittances sent abroad by undocumented immigrants, also targets woke institutions, increases taxes on large university endowments and big nonprofits, and certain tax breaks for billionaire sports teams owners. It also prohibits state and local governments from regulating AI for 10 years. We're going to get into that. Marjorie Taylor Greene has a big beef with that, and it's a good point. Also eliminates taxes on gun silencers, restricts federal funding for gender-affirming care for minors, weakens court ability to enforce rulings against the government, potentially undermining judicial checks on executive power. So trying to go after the courts using a congressional spending bill, which is interesting. Claims to cut federal spending by $1.6 trillion, but, and this is where the issue is, okay? So it says, we're going to cut all of this spending, but actually every single office that evaluates this, independent offices that evaluate this, including, Elon Musk and his Doge team, Rand Paul, not a dumb guy, Thomas Massie, always looking out for fiscal spending, all of them say this adds trillions of dollars to the deficit. And that's the problem with this. It would be fine if it was just about making the tax cuts permanent, but it adds a bunch of debt to the federal spending. Even though it claims to cut spending by $1.6 trillion, actually independent estimates say it will increase the national debt by $3 to $4 trillion over a decade due to the size of the tax cuts. So those are, and Elon Musk brought that up saying, this is going to be a huge problem. This bill is, he says it himself. He says it can't be both big and beautiful. Watch this.
I was disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decrease it, and undermines the work that the Doge team is doing.
I actually thought that when this big, beautiful bill came along, everything he's done on Doge gets wiped out in the first year.
I think a bill can be big or it can be beautiful, but I don't know if it can be both. my personal opinion.
Okay, so Thomas Massie also has some sharp criticisms about the bill. Let's watch what he has to say about this.
The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 90 seconds.
Well, I'd love to stand here and tell the American people, we can cut your taxes and we can increase spending and everything's going to be just fine. But I can't do that because I'm here to deliver a dose of reality. This bill dramatically increases deficits in the near term, but promises our government will be fiscally responsible 5 years from now. Where have we heard that before? How do you bind a future Congress to these promises? This bill is a debt bomb ticking. Congress can do funny math, fantasy math, if it wants, but bond investors don't. And this week, they sent us a message. Moody's downgraded our credit rating, and the bond investors who buy our debt and finance our debt demanded higher interest rates on the 10-year note, the 20-year note, and the 30-year note. What does this mean? Very soon, the government will be paying $16,000 of interest alone per U.S. family. And what are we telling them? Instead of taking care of that problem, we're going to give you a $1,600 tax break. Under the taxing and spending levels in this bill, we're going to rack up, the authors say, $20 trillion of new debt over the next 10 years. I'm telling you, it's closer to $30 trillion of new debt in the next 10 years. Mr. Speaker, we're not rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic tonight. We're putting coal in the boiler and setting a course for the iceberg. If something is beautiful, you don't do it after midnight. I oppose this bill.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Yeah, okay. Donald Trump has, of course, hit back against a lot of the criticisms, and he says so many false statements are being made about the one big, beautiful bill. But what nobody understands is that it's the single biggest spending cut in history by far, but there will be no cuts to Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. In fact, they will be saved from the incompetence of the Democrats. The Democrats who have totally lost their confidence and their way are saying whatever comes to mind, anything to win. They suffered the greatest humiliation in the history of politics, and they're desperate to get back on their game. But they won't be able to do that because their policies are so bad. In fact, they would lead to the destruction of our country and almost did. The one cutting we will do is for waste, fraud, and abuse, something that should have been done by the incompetent radical left Democrats for the last 4 years, but wasn't. Yeah, okay, sure. Nobody's disagreeing that the Democrats spent like crazy. The Democrats under Obama and under Biden both did the same thing. They spiked the debt a ton. I mean, they just spiked it by trillions. And then they did, by the time they left office, they leveled it back out. Still at an increase. But the Republicans have increased it every time they've also taken power. So they haven't done the big spikes like the Democrats have. But in the end, they've ended up at the same trajectory, which is upward with the debt. Rand Paul hit back on this one, and this is what Rand Paul had to say regarding Trump's tweet.
In a separate post, Trump said there's a false narrative about spending in this bill. He said it is, quote, single biggest spending cut in history by far. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul joins me now. Mr. Senator, I know you want more spending cuts included in the bill. Can you tell us what specifically you'd want to cut?
Yeah, it's even more than that. The biggest objection I have to the bill is adding $5 trillion to the debt ceiling. I'm actually very supportive of the tax cuts. I don't accept the CBO notion that the tax cuts will lead to deficits. The reason I believe there'll be more deficits is they're raising the debt ceiling $5 trillion. We know that this year, most of the Republicans, not me, voted to continue the Biden spending levels in March. So we're going to go through September of this year, and the deficit for this year is going to be over $2 trillion. If you're borrowing $5 trillion, that makes me think you're going to add over $2 trillion, maybe $2.8 trillion next year. So it doesn't show me that you've turned around. If you look at the spending cuts, it's complicated because it's $1.5 trillion. It sounds like this enormous number, but it's over 10 years, so it's $150 billion a year. They're also increasing spending for the military and for the border, $300 billion. That's actually more than all the DOGE cuts that we've found so far. So something doesn't really add up here. And I can't be on record as being one who supports increasing the debt by $5 trillion. I think that's irresponsible. The bond markets are already starting to show that they're skittish over this. We got interest rates of over 5% on the 10-year bond. There are real problems we face as a country, and we can't just blithely go on the way we have in the past.
Would you offer any kind of compromise? You don't want to raise the debt ceiling by $5 trillion. Would you okay it for an extra $2 trillion or $3 trillion? I mean, would you compromise?
I have offered a compromise, and the compromise I offered was in the form of an amendment recently, and I'd give them 3 months. And everybody says, oh, it's not long enough. Well, the whole purpose is to make them come back in 3 months and say, what have you done for the spending? Show me where you've cut spending. Because in 3 months' time, we'll be rolling up on the deadline, and they'll be presenting more spending again. So in 3 months, and 3 months is a lot of money, Stuart. It's $500 billion for 3 months. I'd do it for 3 months. I wouldn't default. I'd do it for 3 months, and I'd say, show me now what you have done. Because the history of this town is people making false promises. In fact, everybody in leadership on the Republican side is saying, oh, wait till after the 26 elections. We just need one more election. You remember when they said that about Obamacare? Elect us and we'll get rid of Obamacare. And they flailed away and never did it. It's the same way with spending cuts. They say wait till 2026 or 2027 and we'll have spending cuts. I'm not waiting, and I'm not voting for $5 trillion in debt to see if they will keep their promises.
How much support do you have in the Senate? Can you muster 3, 4, 5, 6 votes for your position?
I think there are 4 people who are skittish about the spending levels. Some of them are skittish about the $5 trillion. I think I'm the most vocal on all fronts, but there are more starting to come to this realization. I think looking at the 10-year and looking at the bond sales being anemic, people not really wanting to buy the government debt, the ratio of purchase to buy orders, bid to buy orders has gone down. So I do think that there is some alarm growing. I think what the real thing's going to happen, and we won't know this, I think, before the bill comes due, but second quarter growth. If second quarter growth is weak, I think there's going to be a generalized freak out about these tariffs and a generalized freak out about not doing anything about spending or debt.
What would happen if your measure is accepted and you give them 3 months worth of debt raising, and you come to the end of the 3 months and you still don't have an agreement on how much more spending to cut? Do we run out of money? Do we shut the government down again? Does that happen?
No, you end up having another discussion over how long you're going to extend the debt ceiling for. And it's funny, people think I won't vote to raise the debt ceiling. I already introduced an amendment to increase it $500 billion. My penny plan, which balances in 5 years, borrows money for 5 years. So I'm willing to borrow money as long as you're willing to change your habits and show that you're willing to have spending reform, but they have to have it. But in the past, what has happened when they haven't reformed, the Democrats all vote for it and the big government Republicans. In fact, this will be the first time conservative Republicans have actually voted for a debt ceiling, and it'll be the largest increase in our debt ceiling in our history. And I think it's a mistake because once conservative Republicans vote for this, there is no conservative opposition. They will own it. The debt will be owned by the Republicans. It's no more pointing fingers at the Democrats and saying, oh, they're the big spenders. It'll be all on Republican shoulders. And I'm not going to be one of the Republicans who's going to be responsible for this debt. I'm going to continue to be a voice saying we need to cut spending.
Senator Rand Paul, thanks so much for being with us this morning. We appreciate it very much.
Okay, so Trump has responded to Rand Paul's criticism, saying Rand Paul has very little understanding of the BBB, especially the tremendous growth that is coming. He loves voting no on everything. He thinks it's good politics, but it's not. The BBB is a big winner. But Rand Paul brought up some really great points. What this bill does is it increases the debt limit to up $5 trillion. So if you're the party of fiscal responsibility, and if you're saying we're going to cut spending, why are you increasing the debt ceiling $5 trillion? He also says that this increases the military and border budget by $300 billion a year while only making cuts of $150 billion a year. Yeah. Do we need more military spending? Do we need border spending? It turns out, no, we actually don't need any of that spending. We need to actually cut wars, reduce wars. We need to reduce our military spending by a lot. And we also need to, it turns out we don't need the border money. We don't need the wall. There's plenty of other ways that we could actually curb migration into the country. The border crisis can be curbed without even building a single wall, without even the high tech, Biden was even talking about, we're going to have a high tech wall, not an actual wall, but a high tech wall. Turns out you didn't need to do any of that. Turns out you could just curb it in the ways that Trump did. So problem solved. Let's just keep doing that. Why do we have to spend a bunch of money? Let's see here. Also, right, and he also says that, this goes completely against Doge. I mean, there Elon Musk was trying to actually cut spending, waste, fraud, and abuse, and this is just adding to it. The one department he didn't get to go to was the Department of Defense. Did you notice that? So Elon Musk is out of there. Doge is ending, or not really sure what's going on with Doge, but Elon isn't going to be around, and the Defense Department wasn't even touched at all. Trump kind of blamed it on, well, I want to play you this clip. This is actually Jim Jordan, who I used to just love Jim Jordan so much, and I hope that he would be one of the good guys, but he really has gone down, he's just really hit or miss. And this is one of those ways where he is a major miss. And he's kind of with Trump on this, where Trump is saying, look, it's the Democrats' fault. Democrats have all these problems. And Jim Jordan is saying the only reason why anybody's, the fact that Democrats are against this is the problem that we have right here. Jim Jordan is going to encapsulate this perfectly. He's saying that because Democrats are against it, you should just be for it.
I said this on the House floor. You know it's a good bill because the left hates it. And the left hates it because it has core common sense Republican principles in it. It cuts taxes. It secures the border. It says if you're an able-bodied adult and you're getting welfare, you're going to have to work. And it says to moms and dads, we got school choice in here, so we know you are the best one to pick where your son or daughter is going to get the best education. 4 key Republican common sense conservative principles. That's why the left doesn't like it. That's why it's good legislation.
Oh, yeah, that's why it's good legislation, because the left doesn't like it. That's the way we're running our political system. That's the way we've continued to run our political system, which is, well, because the right's for it, I'm against it. That's been the tagline of the left definitely since 2016, since Donald Trump won. It's really ramped up, but I'm sure it's been like that the whole time. And now Republicans, same thing. Well, if the left is against it, we're for it. I mean, this is how we can't make any progress in this country for that reason. I want to show you Marjorie Taylor Greene, her criticism of this bill, which is a very good criticism. And this goes back to that AI. This is the type of thing they build into these bills, these random things. It's supposed to be about the budget, and yet they sneak in these little things that they like that, take away our rights, take away our liberties. And this is one of those things, taking away the states' rights. Marjorie Taylor Greene says, full transparency, I did not know about this section on pages 278, 279 of the big, beautiful bill that strips states of the right to make laws or regulate AI for 10 years. I am adamantly opposed to this, and it is a violation of states' rights, and I would have voted no if I'd known this was in it. How did you not know, first of all? I mean, look, Marjorie, been liking you a lot lately, but this is part of the problem. These people do not have time to read these bills. They sneak them on their desk close to midnight and force them to vote on it. And they don't have time to read the 1,000-page text of these bills. And if they did, they'd be able to catch things like this. We should demand that our lawmakers read every single bill before they vote on it. They need to read them because they're voting on things that affect our lives. And this being one of them. And now she finds out it's in it after the fact. And it says, in general, except as provided in paragraph 2, no state or political subdivision thereof may enforce during the 10-year period beginning on the date of the enactment of this act any law or regulation of the state or of political subdivision thereof limiting, restricting, or otherwise regulating artificial intelligence models, artificial intelligence systems, or automated decision systems entered into the interstate commerce. What? Who snuck that into the bill? Which donors do you think demanded this be inserted into a budget bill? That a state is not able to regulate AI on its own? Which donors do you think were able to sneak that one in? Something that takes away our individual liberties, the ability for states to govern the way that they want. Who snuck that in? How much did they pay for it? That is what I would like to know. But fundamentally, the bottom line with this is that there's a handful of Republicans holding the line. Rand Paul, Thomas Massie, Elon Musk coming out and being really vocal. And they're upset about the raising of the debt ceiling when we're supposed to be reducing the debt. That is what Republicans ran on. Increasing the military and border security by $300 billion while only cutting $150 billion. That is not reducing the deficit. That's adding to it. That's basic math. It's simple basic math. If you are spending an extra $300 billion a year, but you're only saving $150 billion a year, you're spending an extra $150 billion a year. That's where that is. Plus, if you're doing tax breaks and you're not bringing in the revenue, then you're going to end up in debt. And that is how we end up with raising the debt ceiling $5 trillion and increasing the debt year after year because Congress has no spending limits. So there it is, right? The so-called party of fiscal responsibility just handed us another multi-trillion-dollar spending spree after spending years warning that Democrats would bankrupt the country. And this is just not new. Both parties do this. They both lie their way into office. Democrats always run on things like universal, you might not agree with these things, but they run on these things and people vote for them for it. Universal health care, which never happens. Taxing the rich, but they're rich and they're not taxing themselves. Ending wars, well, they just fund different ones if they end others. Fighting censorship while pushing for more of it. Republicans always run on shrinking the government, but they grow it every single time. Cutting spending while exploding the debt. Free speech, well, unless it's speech they don't like. Draining the swamp, and then they fill it with new swamp creatures. Nothing ever changes. And until we stop falling for it and playing team sports, they're going to keep doing this. So we have to become politically independent and criticize when criticism is due. And I applaud Elon Musk for falling in and out of love with a politician in record speed. Good on him for being able to do that. Lots of people fall in love and then they hold on to the abusive relationship. He didn't. That's good. We should all follow suit. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. We do live stream it every day. It's a 1-hour show. You can catch it. It is totally free. Just go to KimIversonShow.com. See you there.